The dark forest always kept its secrets. The elders in the nearby village used to warn, "Never go there after sunset." The trees seemed fused together, like one living creature, their roots crawling out of the ground, twisted like the bodies of monsters. Hunters sometimes entered, teenagers looking for thrills, and the occasional tourist drawn by its mystery. But none of them knew that behind every step in the thicket lurked something worse than the dark, something watching. First came the sound of snapping twigs, as if someone was walking alongside them. But there were too many footsteps, and no people in sight. The story begins with a group of teenagers who decided to spend the night by a campfire. They laughed, telling each other legends about the forest man. But one boy, Igor, kept glancing over his shoulder. A single thought rang in his head. "Someone's watching us." In the distance, a figure appeared, tall, hunched, with hollow eyes, white completely gone. A girl screamed, "Did you see that?" But the others just laughed. Only Igor noticed how their laughter echoed back to them, yet it wasn't their voices. The flames flickered, the wind fell silent, and suddenly there was an unnatural quiet. No crickets, no rustling leaves. A girl named Lena went to fetch water from the stream and never returned. At first, they thought she was joking. Then they went looking. All they found was her bucket lying in the mud, and tracks leading deeper into the forest. But the tracks were strange, like a person had been dragging another body. Panic set in. One suggested they should run back to the village. But the trail behind them was gone, as if the forest had swallowed the road, leaving only the path forward, deeper into the darkness. Branches whipped across their faces as the trees grew tighter, every turn looking the same. Panic grew heavier. Suddenly, Lena's scream echoed through the woods, but it wasn't real. It was distorted, broken into fragments, like someone was imitating her voice. Igor realized it was bait. They moved faster, but ahead stood another silhouette. A man in torn clothes, holding a massive knife. His face was smeared with something black, only his eyes gleaming like those of a beast. He didn't walk. He glided between the trees. The teenagers scattered in different directions. A mistake that would be fatal. The forest swallowed the teenagers one by one. Igor ran alone, heart hammering, branches tearing his skin. Somewhere behind him came heavy, wet footsteps. He stopped for a moment, holding his breath, and heard it, the sound of something dragging across the ground. Flesh, maybe, or a body. From the shadows came a whistle. Not human. Too low, too distorted. When Igor turned, he saw a shape crouching behind a tree, its head tilted unnaturally, as if bones had been broken long ago but still moved. And in its hand, the knife glistened in the pale moonlight. Another scream tore through the night, this time one of the boys. It was short, cut off instantly. Silence. Then the sound of gnawing. The others froze, realizing they were not just being chased. They were being hunted, devoured. Panic spread again. They tried to regroup, but every step deeper twisted the forest into a maze. Some trees looked marked with strange symbols, carved crudely, dripping as if with old blood. They realized this wasn't random. The killer knew these woods better than anyone. This was his home, his trap, his feeding ground. The survivors dwindled. Only Igor and two girls remained. They stumbled upon an old wooden shack hidden in the thicket. It reeked of rot, animal skins, and something worse, death. Inside hung bones, some clearly human, tied together with rope. The girls began to sob, covering their mouths. On the floor, they found Lena's necklace, snapped in half, blood-stained. Then they heard a creak from above. Slowly, Igor raised his head. On the rafters, crouched like a spider, was the killer. His face was clearer now, half burned, half covered in mud and ash, eyes wide and wild. He dropped silently between them. Chaos erupted. The killer's knife slashed, the girls screamed, blood sprayed against the walls. Igor managed to shove one girl out of the shack, but the other fell silent in an instant. Outside, he and the last survivor ran, but the forest twisted again. The path never led out, it only circled back. Every shadow looked alive. Every gust of wind sounded like breathing. At one point, they swore they saw the village lights, but when they reached them, it was only dozens of lanterns hung in the trees, flickering around a ring of bones. The killer had set the stage long ago. The girl collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, whispering she couldn't go on. Igor tried to pull her, but she was frozen. Then, a hand shot out from the ground. No, not the ground, but a shallow grave hidden beneath leaves. Dozens of corpses surrounded them, half buried, their faces twisted in terror. The girl screamed, and in that moment the killer struck. Igor turned too late. Her scream ended in gurgling silence. Blood seeped into the soil, mixing with the corpses beneath. Now Igor was alone. Exhausted, trembling, Igor stumbled deeper. He no longer knew where he was, only that the killer was always near. The forest itself seemed alive, pulling him toward the inevitable. Finally, he broke into a clearing. Moonlight revealed the massive tree, its roots forming a hollow like a mouth. Inside, bodies were stacked, decayed, skeletal, all staring with empty sockets. Igor fell to his knees. He realized every story told in the village was true, but no one survived to confirm them. Then he heard it again, that broken imitation of Lena's voice, whispering from behind. The killer emerged slowly, knife in hand, no need to rush now. Igor tried to crawl backward, but there was nowhere left to run. "Why?" he begged, voice cracking. But the man said nothing. Only a grin stretched across his disfigured face. The forest held its breath. Then the blade came down. Pain, blinding and endless, swallowed Igor's world. His scream echoed through the night but was quickly silenced, like all the others before him. The forest accepted another soul. Morning came. The forest was silent, peaceful again, as if nothing had happened. Birds sang, the sun painted golden rays across the leaves. Villagers searching for the missing teenagers found nothing but abandoned backpacks near the stream. No bodies, no blood, just emptiness. The elders shook their heads. "The forest takes what it wants," they muttered. At night, when the wind howled, some swore they could still hear faint screams echoing among the trees, or laughter that wasn't theirs. The legend of the forest killer grew, but the truth was far worse. He was still out there, waiting, watching, and the forest would always hide him. The desert stretched endlessly, a barren ocean of sand and silence. The sun had long since fallen, and a pale, cold moon hung over the dunes. A small group of travelers, lost after their truck broke down, trudged forward under the starlight. The wind whispered through the dunes, carrying strange voices, sometimes like laughter, sometimes like screams. They thought dehydration was playing tricks on their minds, but the shadows stretching across the sand moved in ways that didn't match their bodies. The youngest traveler, Mark, swore he saw figures walking alongside them, tall and thin, with faces hidden under cloth. When he pointed, the desert fell completely silent, as if listening. They set up a fire using scraps of wood, but the flames seemed weak, swallowed by the desert night. Sarah, the eldest of the group, told them about the legend of the Desert Watcher, a spirit that hunted the lost. According to her, it never killed right away. It stalked, whispered, and fed on fear until its victims begged for death. The others laughed nervously, but then the fire hissed and died, as though smothered by an unseen hand. The temperature plummeted. Around them, the sand began to shift, rising and falling like something was crawling underneath. A deep hum echoed in the air. They clutched each other, realizing the desert was awake. The travelers decided to keep moving, hoping to find the old highway. But the desert warped around them. No matter which direction they walked, the dunes seemed to reshape, funneling them in circles. Footprints vanished seconds after being made, erased by the shifting sand. Suddenly Mark screamed. He claimed a hand had grabbed his ankle from beneath the sand. When they pulled him up, his leg was bleeding, deep claw marks cut into his skin. Sarah whispered a prayer, but her voice cracked, because in the distance, at the top of a dune, they all saw it. A figure cloaked in black, face hidden, standing impossibly still. The moment they blinked, it vanished. Exhaustion set in. The group stumbled into what looked like ruins, crumbling stone pillars jutting from the sand. Strange carvings covered the walls, depicting twisted shapes of half-human, half-serpent creatures. In the center lay a pit, black and bottomless. The air was thick with the stench of rot. One traveler, David, insisted they rest there. But as soon as they closed their eyes, the whispers returned. Not just one voice now, hundreds, layered, chanting in a language none of them knew. David awoke screaming, claiming something had crawled into his mouth in his sleep. His tongue was blackened, swollen, and his eyes rolled back. Within minutes he was dead. The others fled into the night, but the whispers followed. By now, Sarah and Mark were the only two left. The desert seemed endless, the stars above unfamiliar, as though they were no longer under the same sky. Every shadow stretched toward them. Every dune looked like a giant watching silently. Sarah collapsed, whispering that the desert wanted them to stay forever. Mark tried to carry her, but then he heard it, a low voice speaking his name. It came from Sarah's lips, but her eyes were lifeless. He dropped her, realizing she was gone. When he turned, he saw the cloaked figure again, closer this time, knife-like fingers glinting in the moonlight. Mark ran, stumbling through the dunes, his lungs burning. Behind him, footsteps echoed, but they weren't his own. He screamed for help, but the desert devoured his voice. He fell to his knees, the sand swallowing him inch by inch. He looked up one last time at the sky, where the moon now looked like a giant, lidless eye staring down. As the desert consumed him, he finally understood. No one ever truly got lost in these sands. They were taken. The whispers weren't the cries of the damned, they were warnings from souls forever trapped beneath the dunes. By dawn, the desert looked calm again, hiding its victims under the endless waves of sand. The wind carried faint echoes of Mark's final scream, and the legend of the Desert Watcher lived on, hungry, patient, eternal. Mark stumbled through the dunes, lungs burning, every step heavier than the last. Behind him, the footsteps followed, steady, patient, like a predator enjoying the chase. He cried out for Sarah, though he knew she was gone. His voice was swallowed by the vast emptiness of the desert. At the crest of a dune, the cloaked figure appeared again, closer than ever, its head tilting unnaturally, pale light flickering where eyes should be. Mark dropped to his knees, clawing at the sand as whispers rose around him, pleading voices, mocking laughter, cries for help. The ground shifted, and skeletal hands broke through, pulling him down. He fought, but the harder he struggled, the deeper he sank. The last thing he saw was the figure's hood falling back, revealing not a face, but a hollow void that reflected his terror. The sand swallowed him whole. By dawn, the desert was calm again, golden under the rising sun. No bodies, no tracks, only silence. Yet when the wind howled across the dunes, travelers swore they heard faint screams, and sometimes their own names whispered back.